All right, my next guest on the All Angels podcast is the MLB beat reporter for the Angels, Rhett Bollinger. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is kind of a good time to have you on. You know, as we record this, a Thursday early afternoon. This is the halfway point of the Angels season, so I figured it was a great time to have you on. Kind of going back a little bit though, this last weekend in St. Louis with Albert making his first return since signing with the Angels, and you were there. Can you talk about the kind of maybe the excitement beforehand, and obviously the applause and the standing ovation that he ended up getting on all three of the games?
Yeah, it really was a pretty amazing weekend. I mean, to see Albert get that much love from the fans, I mean, it was incredible to see him getting standing ovation every single time he had an at-bat. It was a really cool gesture. Those fans there are pretty amazing. Yadier Molina, you can see how much of a relationship he has with Pujols, allowing them to do that, and also, the hug the first time. And the home run was awesome, too, to see that. Obviously, it really, in the grand scheme of things, in terms of the game, it was 4-0 when he hit it, but just, the crowd reaction, the standing ovation, the tipping the cap, you never really see that anywhere, really. I mean, I've never really seen a guy ever have, really a homecoming like that ever. I mean, you don't really see too many guys get standing ovations from the opposing crowd. I think that the big thing was, I think it helped that, it's been a long time since he last played there. He signed with the Angels, as you know, back before 2012. So it's been a kind of a long time. So I think some of the bitterness from some of the fans that might have been mad that he left is kind of gone. So I think at this point, there was a little bit just more all love. There was really no negativity, which was cool. So, yeah, I mean, I've been covering baseball for, a decent amount of time now. And that was one of the cooler, regular season series I've ever seen. Because, I mean, it was a really awesome atmosphere. And you could tell Pujols was really happy to be a part of it.
What was your, I guess, anticipation going into that series? Were you expecting something like that? Because my co-host and I, we were talking about it leading up to it. We were kind of expecting, yes, he's going to get a standing ovation. Yes, everyone's going to, tip their cap to him. But once the game starts, kind of go back to just being a normal fan. But it seems like they were Pujols' fans the whole weekend, not just at the beginning. Were you anticipating that, or what were your thoughts going into it?
Yeah, I didn't think it'd be to that extent. You're right. I thought maybe that first at bat for sure, and they kind of give him nice applause. The other at bats, I didn't know it would be like a crazy standing ovation every single at bat. I mean, and it would have went on too. I mean, if it weren't for Yadier and the pitchers and even Pujols, okay, let's get to baseball. Those cheers would have never stopped in a sense. So, yeah, I mean, it surprised me just how passionate. I hadn't been to St. Louis in a while after I covered the 2011 NLCS, the Brewers versus the Cardinals. I hadn't been to a regular season Cardinals game before, so it was just cool to see how the fans, just how passionate they are, and so yeah, it definitely surprised me just how much of it there was, and yeah, it was pretty just incredible to see, for a visiting player, just that much applause was just insane.
So now, kind of moving forward now to yesterday, Wednesday afternoon. Ohtani threw his first bullpen session since coming off of Tommy John. Any word on how he's feeling? Obviously, he had a great game that night, so obviously he's feeling okay. But as far as his arm, anything, any new news coming back, how he feels the day afterwards?
I haven't heard anything today yet about how he felt, but we talked to him yesterday after the throwing session, and he felt fine. And after the game, he talked to the Japanese media, said everything went well too. So you got to figure that everything was fine. I mean, he was only throwing, he said it like 50%, which, is probably not quite true. He's probably throwing a little harder than that. But, yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about that. I mean, even right now, I think he's going to throw again off a mound on Saturday, I believe, a couple more days, and he'll kind of build up from there. But as you know, he's not going to pitch this year, anyway. So it's kind of one of those things where he'll kind of continue to ramp it up. But, yeah, everything went well with that. He threw, a decent amount of pitches. He threw about 40 pitches off the mound. Wasn't throwing, full intensity, but still a good sign. And, I think that he's totally fine right now. As you saw it, obviously, it didn't affect his offense. He had a huge night offensively.
Yeah, it was a great night for the Angels in general that night. Talking about now another guy coming back from Tommy John, J.C. Ramirez. He just got extended. They agreed to extend him another week rehab. And I might have missed it. Have they said his role when he does come back, whether it will be a starter or kind of maybe what they end up doing with Cahill last night?
It's a good question. They haven't said yet. So right now, as you said, he was supposed to. I thought he was going to come back as soon as this Friday because that's when his original rehab was supposed to come to a close. But they did extend it because he's coming off Tommy John. You can do that So yeah, as of right now, they're going to continue to kind of start him down there, keep him stretched out. But truthfully, so far, he hasn't really pitched that well down there. I think he's given up like 17 runs in 17 innings. So I think right now the big thing will be for him is kind of now it's going to be a little bit more performance-based too, where we know he's kind of getting a little bit more, healthy from the Tommy John. It's been, like 16 months now or so. So it's been a little while. So I think now it's just a matter of him kind of pitching well at AAA, and then he could be activated. And I think it would be kind of based on need. There's definitely a chance he could come up and start and maybe replace a guy like, Pena, or we could see him, as a reliever too, kind of like Cahill. So at least there's options there. We know Ramirez has been a good pitcher in the past. It's just sometimes it's hard to get that command coming back from Tommy John right away. So I think right now they're trying to just kind of fix that in the minor leagues so that he can pitch a little better when he does come up.
So that was one of them. And I guess another return that is hopefully, a couple days away is Andrelton Simmons just got done with the rehab start on Tuesday night at Inland Empire. Wasn't activated Wednesday. Don't know, by the time this airs on Friday, he could be activated. Not sure. But in his return, who do you believe is the odd man out? Because between Rengifo, obviously La Stella, and the All-Star caliber year he's having right now, and Fletcher making great plays, all offense and defense, who do you believe is going to be the odd man out when on his return?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I do think Andrelton Simmons could be back as soon as Thursday night, tonight really. So I think it's getting really close here. I was interested to see that it was Tovar who was DFA'd, and it was not Rengifo who was optioned, just because, like I said, there's going to be kind of five infielders now, trying to get those at bats in terms of the fact that you have Fletcher and you have La Stella in that mix, and now you have Simmons, and then, you got to find a way to get Rengifo at bats because, the rookie, he's going to need those for his development and also just for his production. But they feel like they can get him enough at bats. I think right now they're realizing that Fletcher and La Stella, for as good as they've been, they've played almost every day, and really in the past, they haven't really been like everyday players throughout the course of a full major league season before. So I think they're kind of realizing maybe it'd be smart to kind of have Rengifo up here to kind of have like a little bit of a mix where he'll start some days at second, some at short, move him around, kind of have, give some days off here to Fletcher and La Stella based on matchups. And even when Simmons comes back, I think coming off the ankle injury, he'll have some days off here and there. So they feel like they can kind of rotate those guys around enough to get them consistent at bat. That's kind of the plan, kind of going forward.
And talking about Tommy La Stella, obviously, again, like I said, we're recording this Thursday afternoon, so the All-Star voting closes in, I think, like 3-4 hours. So by the time this airs, he could be the starting All-Star second baseman. But is he the surprise of the Angels for the first half of the season?
I would think so. I mean, it's pretty amazing. A guy that they traded for, I thought, was a smart move as a backup guy that could play from second and third. In his past, he's always been a guy that got on base pretty well, a good situational hitter. I think last year led the majors in pinch hits. So he was kind of more of like a role player his whole career. But I thought at least he's a solid one at that. And sure enough, totally proved us wrong where his power surge just come out of nowhere. Coming into the year, he only had 10 home runs in his entire career in 5 seasons, and now, he's already up to 16. So it's pretty amazing. Definitely, to me, it's definitely the biggest surprise, especially if we were to win as a starting second baseman. And I think even if he doesn't, I know last I saw DJ LeMahieu was winning. So there's still a chance, even if he doesn't win it, that he could still be voted on by the players or added to that roster just because he says it's a good season, and also because he does have some, versatility that he can play second or third if he was an All-Star added to the team. But, really it's incredible. And you see the Cubs fans, too, how passionate they are, because you got to figure they had probably a role in how well he did in the voting. But I think just casual fans, too, just in general this year, kind of realized, wait, how is, Tommy La Stella having a year like this? So to me, it is pretty amazing and definitely the biggest surprise for sure.
Yeah, Tommy, definitely a big surprise. If you had to kind of summarize the Angels' first half in general, how would you summarize it?
Well, it's one of those ones where there was definitely a lot of injuries, I guess, is kind of the first theme for sure. That's kind of one of the big issues with, having guys like Upton get hurt right away. And, you lost Simmons for a while. You've had injuries to, Heaney was out for a while, Connie for a month. So I think it was just kind of about weathering those injuries. And they did a decent job of that. Some guys stepped in pretty well. Goodwin for a while did pretty well there for Upton. And, we've seen what Fletcher and La Stella have done. But the pitching is kind of, as the free agent signings Harvey, Cahill, and Allen all did not work out at all. So the fact that they were actually above 500, was pretty solid for all they had gone through in a sense. Because you knew what you're going to get from Trout, because he's the best player in baseball. He's always going to, just have incredible years like he is. So he obviously helps that team a lot. But, right now at 41-40, it kind of seems like that's kind of what they are. But I think second half they could be better because I think they're more healthy now. And I think the guys I've been impressed by Griffin Canning. I think Suarez has got a chance to be pretty good too. He's just really young. So there's some intrigue for sure. And I do think that going forward, I think it's a positive outlook. It's just going to be hard right now seeing if they can catch any of those teams for that wild card spot. That might be a little tough because, they are a little bit out of it, but only a few games right now. The Astros have fallen back a little bit, but I'd be very surprised if they were to kind of catch them. But for me, I think this has kind of been about injuries in the first half, trying to overcome them. And I think the second half, hopefully for their sake, is more about overcoming those injuries and not having as many of those to deal with.
Yeah, kind of like projecting to the second half. The next big thing, I guess, after the AllStar game would be the trade deadline. And this year, correct me if I'm wrong, it's one solid deadline, no trade waivers or anything like that. So
nothing in August, yeah. It just ends July 31st. Yep.
So with that in mind, do you anticipate the Angels to be a mover at all? Like whether it's, you saw the Kinsler deal last year that you get Buttrey in. So, something like that, or do you see them just holding pat to what they have?
Yeah, that's a good question. You're right. And that was a great trade for them. It's kind of like a kind of under the radar type trade. That, Kinsler wasn't having that great of a year. We've seen Buttrey turn into the best reliever on the team. So that kind of move can really be really helpful, especially considering a guy like that's under control for so long too. But yeah, at this point, I don't see them making any major trades. They could. So if they kind of fall off, in July and out of it, maybe they could make a trade kind of like that. I just don't know which guy they would on their roster is really coming out of no one's really an impending phrase and they could flip like that right now that I could think of. And if they were to trade for some help, I think it'd probably be maybe a little bit of pitching help, maybe a starter or a reliever, more than anything else on the position player side. But yeah, even then I wouldn't see them being that aggressive. So I think that it's probably not going to be a very exciting deadline for the Angels, but I think if they're really in it, they'll probably look for a reliever they can kind of add into their bullpen. And if not, just looking at the roster veteran-wise, there's not really that many guys that the team is really interested in, like a Jonathan Lucroy, but even that I would be surprised. There's not that many guys that are really kind of coming off the last year. Their deals would be kind of veterans they could just sell off to a contending team.
So this is kind of more of a MLB general question, but do you think that one solid deadline, like you said, is going to help movement at the trade deadline, or do you think more teams will hold on to what they have because there's still a long time between then and the end of the season where they might hold on and try to make a run with what they have?
I think the hope is it's going to maybe make some more moves just because teams have to know that before you kind of hold on to a guy and make that trade in August. We've seen some big trades in August in the past. Like I think Verlander was an August trade. We've seen that even the Dodgers make some big ones in the past too. I think that big one way back with like Adrian Gonzalez and those guys was an August trade. So they used to happen, but now I think there's going to be more pressure for front office to be like, hey, we've got to know where we're going to be on July 31st because after that, there's no going back. So I think teams that are out of it. I think this year too. I think there's just more clear buyers and sellers too, just because there are some teams that are just clearly trying to. I don't know if tank's the right word, but clearly not trying to win and trying to build up draft picks and assets. So I think there'll be some clear sellers too. So I'm curious to see how it goes, but I do think the hope, at least from MLB, would be there's more trades there and more of a frenzy, just because teams know this is the last chance they have to add whatever they need.
Yeah, that's something that's for me personally is really going to be interesting to see coming in the next few months. Some talk around baseball now. Nets being extended. I think there's about 3 or 4 teams that have said that their future plans they are going to extend Nets. Have the Angels had any kind of even preliminary talks about them extending Nets at all, or they have not really touched the subject?
They've had some internal talks about it. Nothing really too much in the public yet. I think at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if MLB maybe again after the year ask teams to just have it go further down the line, just because we've seen, truthfully, a couple more. I think Bellinger hit, a youngster in the face recently, and I think yesterday ESPN had a story about a girl got hit by an Astros player, the fractured skull. So And I was in New York actually covering the Twins when, I think, I forget what player it was, hit a line drive, Simmons hit a little kid in the stands. That was the one that kind of put everything over the top for just the netting over the dugout. So it stinks because obviously fans, you want to be able to get foul balls, you want to be able to get balls from the players thrown to you. But safety at the end of the day, it's just like you have to keep these people safe. And people always say, oh, well, get off your cell phone. But I don't care if you're on your cell phone or not. Some of those foul balls guys hit, with exit velocities of 100 miles per hour. I don't care who you are, even if you're a player sitting in the stands, covering your face in time and doing that, especially for a kid, it's not their fault. So I think that it's a tough thing because you want to have the best access to the field and the best sight lines. But at the end of the day, especially for the kids' sake and everything else, I think safety should trump it. And truthfully, I mean, the nets nowadays, too, they're so see-through and so thin, you don't really even notice it. But I do think MLB at the end of the year probably have more of a talk with all the teams and see if they do something more uniform down the line. But the Angels haven't done anything yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do next season.
All right, so going forward, season view. I'm not gonna ask you whether to say the Angels get to this point or not, but what kind of record do you think they will need to make the wild card?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think probably the second wild card, probably high 80s in wins. I don't think it's going to be in the 90s right now. I think it's going to be kind of a battle between teams like the Red Sox, Indians, and the Rangers really have done a nice job of being in that race right now too. The A's are still in that mix, but we know that they've had the Frankie Montas suspension certainly hurt them a lot. So yeah, I would think that probably high 80s for that second wild card, potentially into the low 90s, but at least historically, the last couple of years, it's been more like high 80s for that second wild card. Teams have sneak in that spot sometimes. And the Rays have fallen off a little bit recently, so they're in that mix too. I think they're leading the first wild card right now. But I would think high 80s, low 90s.
Yeah, that's kind of where we were thinking too coming into the season. So normally what we like to do with our guests, especially when it's the first time on, trying to get to know them a little more with the baseball. So my question for you would be, what is your first memory of baseball, whether it's going to a game, watching it on TV growing up, or anything like that?
That's a good question. I mean, yeah, wow. Man, I was around baseball a lot growing up. I loved it. My family, truthfully, I guess this is an Angels podcast, but truthfully, I grew up in Glendora in LA County, so I was a Dodger fan growing up. But as a kid, we used to go with my great-grandpa. I was lucky enough to have my great-grandpa still alive. So my great-grandpa and my dad and I, and sometimes my grandpa too, although my dad's dad was an Angel fan, which is funny. But we would go to Dodger games a lot growing up. And so I think, I can't remember my first game. It would have been, I was a big Mike Piazza fan back then. I remember seeing Ralph Mondesi home run when I was really young. I think that was really cool. Noma was a really cool year for me. And then I loved playing Little League. As soon as I was old enough, as soon as I was 5, I was playing Little League and playing in Glendora. So yeah, I mean, baseball has been part of my life. Since I could pretty much walk, I was always throwing a ball around, and my dad and grandpa and everybody else were such big baseball fans. It was just always something I always did and played. And like I said, I was more of a Dodger fan growing up, but I certainly followed the Angels enough too. And I remember when Tim Salmon was the Rookie of the Year, the same year that Mike Piazza was, and I think that was pretty cool as a 7-year-old. So yeah, I definitely was around baseball a lot growing up.
And you said you're from Glendora, and years previous you have covered the Twins, Minnesota Twins. So when you got your assignment saying that you're coming back home to cover the Angels, how was that, and how was the family reaction?
It was incredible. It was really awesome. So like I said, I grew up in Glendora, went to Damien High School out in Laverne and went to USC. And then, so I covered the Angels actually back in 2008 as an intern. And in 2009 and 10, I was the backup out here, covering Dodgers, Angels, visiting teams, features. In 2011, I was, I got the Twins beat. It was a big step up for me. And so I moved to Minnesota for 8 seasons, covered the Twins from 2011 to 2018. So yeah, this past off season, I was actually home visiting some family when I got a call from MLB, basically essentially telling me that, this was in late November, right before the winter meetings, that, this opening had come up and they wanted me to fill it and to come home and to cover the Angels. And yeah, the reaction was, I was so happy to be able to come back home. And my parents and grandparents, everybody else were just thrilled to death, and aunts and uncles and sister and her husband and my niece and nephew. So yeah, so it's just exciting. I think about the off season. I was able to come home, for Christmas and Thanksgiving over the years, but now to be home fully around the family is really nice. Growing up here, a lot of friends and family are out here, and it's fun. I said I had a prior relationship with the Angels. I enjoyed covering them. 10 years ago. It was a fun team to cover, especially in 2008 when I was an intern. I was a team that won, I think 100 games, and it was an incredible team. So I was very familiar with the organization. I knew their PR staff well, including Tim Mead, who's now left for the Hall of Fame, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, it was just an exciting time for me. I really, for a couple of years, for a little while, truthfully, I'd always kind of in my head always wanted to I got to that point where I kind of wanted to come back at some point. I loved Minnesota. I loved Minneapolis. I loved living there. The Twins are great to me. It was a fun team to cover. But I think at the end of the day, I wanted to be home, and it happened, and it was really awesome to get that chance. And so far, it's been awesome to see Mike Trout play every day, and to see the stuff with Pujols this year was incredible too. So yeah, it's fun to be back home for sure.
Now, the guys that I do the podcast with, we collect, whether it's signed balls, bobbleheads, all the kind of stadium giveaways. Do you collect anything, whether it's inside, outside of sports?
Yeah, I've got a ton of sports memorabilia for sure. I mean, the nice thing about covering games is they give you usually like the bobblehead of that day. So I've got a lot of Twin stuff like that too. But truthfully, growing up, my dad and family still a lot of Dodger fans, so I've got a lot of bobbleheads from those games as well. But a lot of Angels ones, and then autograph wise, as a reporter, you can't get autographs in terms of asking for them,
right,
or it's just kind of taboo. It's kind of like, but I still have just a lot just from in general being around the game. So I've got a cool Mike Trout one, and got Kershaw, and I've got Mauer stuff from being in Minnesota, and just things like that, and some cool ones, and some Vince Scully stuff, which is cool. And I had a chance obviously to meet him back in the day when he was still doing Dodgers, which was really cool. And yeah, even growing up, I was a big Mark McGwire fan because Mark McGwire went to Damien High School the same time as my dad actually. So I've got a couple McGwire autograph balls in the house and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I've got a pretty good collection of some Hall of Famers and Cal Ripken, I think. And so yeah, it's pretty cool to kind of collect all that kind of stuff. And I still have, when I was a kid, I still have a lot of ticket stubs from the games I went to, and all sorts of things. The baseball cards too. I've got an entire, kind of bucket of baseball cards, so I should go through more, and also some binders that are more, that at least at the time I thought were more, kind of cooler baseball cards. So yeah, I mean, I've definitely kind of established a pretty cool collection of baseball stuff over the years for sure.
That's really cool because, yeah, we have our collection and we put it together, and it's pretty much like a garage full with all of the three of us that do the podcast. But
that's awesome.
You grew up a fan of baseball, and now you're writing for MLB.com. What was your first wow moment where whether it's walking into a clubhouse or going to some kind of event, and you're thinking wow, this is really crazy?
So yeah, I think for me in 2008, just walking into that clubhouse for the first time, the thing that was cool about going to USC when I went there was that I was there kind of for the peak of their football kind of.
Okay, Pete
powers,
Carroll, the Pete Carroll years.
Yeah, I was there for Pete Carroll and the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush years. So I was kind of around even though they were college players at the time, they're kind of considered big stars. That kind of helped me kind of at least not get so starstruck. But I remember going to the Angels clubhouse for the first time. Never been in an MLB clubhouse, didn't know what to expect. I think the first player I ever interviewed actually was Calvin Escobar, who was coming off an injury at the time. But the person that really made me feel comfortable, though, and really helped me was Torrey Hunter. From day one, Torrey Hunter was so good to me that he made me feel comfortable and made me feel like I belonged in that clubhouse as a reporter. But I think the first time I ever really kind of got that starstruck feeling was that rookie year, the Yankees came into town and they actually had me cover the Yankees. So I think just having to go into that clubhouse and interview A-Rod and interview Jeter and those kind of guys, I think that was the first time where I was just wow, kind of getting starstruck by those kind of guys. But yeah, and even that covering I did the next year I did the AllStar game in Anaheim, and that one too was one of the ones where just every player there and all the Hall of Famers that show up, you're just oh my God, I cannot believe it. Kind of pinch yourself. You said someone who's such a fan of the game growing up, to see it all and to be a part of it now and to meet so many people that you grew up watching, to interview them and develop relationships with a lot of people like that too, is really cool. I mean, over the years, I probably interviewed or met probably close to 20 Hall of Famers at least. I mean, so it's pretty cool that you'd be able to kind of, a game that you love so much, kind of now get to be a part of it and kind of document the history of it in a sense as a reporter.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said you guys, whether reporters or even we've talked to Victor Rojas and Gooby, that job to me is just crazy. That seems just a lot of fun. Kind of going with your job, what are the best and worst parts of the job?
Well, the best obviously is the fact that you get to watch so much baseball and be around it. and, you know, be able to, like I say, develop relationships with people in the game, whether it's people that work as executives or players too, and kind of just for the effect of trying to, you know as much as you can about the game and try to read as much as you can. I mean, the downside of it is obviously it's a lot of nights and it's a lot of weekends. It's a lot of travel. I enjoy traveling, but, you know, if you have a young family, which I don't currently, but if you have, you know, young kids, it's very difficult because, you know, you're on the road so much, and even spring training is, you know, 6 weeks where you're kind of away from home for a long chunk of time. So that's kind of one of the things that kind of can be tough, is just all the travel, because it is such a long season. But, you know, it's one of those things where it's a job where people don't, because it is fun and because it is a cool job to have. It's, you know, people don't like to hear you complain in a sense. So really there's not that much. It's just more it's just kind of the grind of it can be a little bit. But at the same time, you know, the players are going through it too. And it's kind of fun to see how, you know, a long season plays out. And yeah, just being around, you know, being able to I've done a lot of playoff series in the past too, where they've sent me even when the Twins didn't go. And it's just cool to see the fans and just, you know, how excited they get. And but even this past, you know, weekend in St. Louis just shows you the passion from the fans, and, you know, and it's something that I always had too. So it's cool to be a part of that and to write about it and kind of capture it, and to not just see it, but to be able to go down there and ask Albert, you know, what was it like, and be able to ask whatever you want of him, and then write your own story and come up with it your own angle. It's just fun for me. I've always, I guess growing up, I always really enjoyed, you know, sports more than anything, but also as I got to high school, realized I like that. I like to write. And so I realized kind of late in my high school career when I stopped playing baseball that how can I stay in sports but, like, you know, make a career out of it? I thought, well, I like writing, so I'll try to be a sports writer, and tried it out at USC. I did a lot of football and basketball there when they were kind of at their heyday, and it helped me get a little exposure. And sure enough, you know, I've been at MLB.com now since 2008. So it's been over 10 years. It's gone by super fast, but yeah, definitely been a fun ride for sure.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be a fun ride, going to a big program like USC, and like you said, in their heyday when the football team was all over the news. So here's some things from baseball I want to get your opinions on. Bat flip, no bat flip?
Oh, bat flip for sure. Yeah, definitely. I mean, at this point, don't give up a home run if you don't want to see a bat flip.
I agree with you 100%. Shift or no shift?
I'm for shifting in a sense, if that's what the data says, you know, but I'm curious to see if hitters how they adapt to it, because it's not as easy as everyone says in terms of, oh, just hit the ball the other way, or, oh, just bunt it. That's not the players, you know, that's not their game. You know, these power hitters, their game hit the ball over the fence. So I'm for shifting. I don't know that I don't think they should just ban the shift, but I am curious to see if hitters ever do adapt or what kind of happens. But for now, I think that if, you know, there's no rules against it, I don't think there should be any right now yet either.
All right, and I'll let you go on this last one because you've been more than generous with your time. Your Walkup song, and why?
Ooh, I was always partial to one I liked when I was in Minnesota. Byron Buxton had Return of the Mac, which I always liked that song. So I don't know why I always liked that song for some reason. So whenever he had that one, I was like, oh man, that's a good jam. I was always jealous of that. Also, the one I also liked a lot too was Aaron Hicks when he was with the Twins, that California Love. And I know now it's kind of more of a Kenley type thing right there, but that one too, as a Californian, I guess, especially when I was in Minnesota, I always was partial to that, because I was so, even though I was always in Minnesota, I was always a Southern California or an LA kid at heart for sure. So definitely like Return of the Mac or California Love, I guess, is probably my two jams for sure if I was coming up to the plate. Nice.
That's cool to know. Where can people see your stuff? Go ahead and your Twitter account and all that stuff.
Yeah, my Twitter account is just at Rhett Bollinger, RhettBollinger. All my work's at angels.com, MLB.com, but on the Angels website, pretty much everything I write's on there. I think in the off season we do more of a podcast, not so much during the season. So I'll try to promote that a little bit more in the off season when that starts up again. I have a Facebook page I don't use as much. I put some of my stories on, but mostly it's going to be my Twitter account, Rhett Bollinger, and then link to articles there and tweet about the games, that kind of stuff, and then all my actual work is on the Angels.com.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much for taking time out and talking to us and just talking Angels baseball.
No problem. Yeah, anytime. That was really fun, man. Anytime, honestly. That was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you.